welcome back to the Age of Political Review. Today's topic is the recent death penalty case for Uyghur Muslims in the 2015 Erawan Shrine bombing. And the Bangkok court just sentenced two men to death. And the death penalty is very, very rare in Thailand. It hasn't been applied for a very, very long time, I believe in 2018. And there's been a moratorium on the subject, it's ongoing for about 10 years. So this case has very, very interesting implications that I want to talk about today. But first, I suppose there's some background that's important. One, the death penalty is very rare, but there are a lot of people in Thailand that are on death row. And I think from the last statistics that I was able to come up with, there are around 450, 460 people that are on death row in Thailand. The majority of them are men. I think 400 or so are men, and about 60 women. The death penalty is very rare. It rarely sentences people to death, even though the state maintains a certain number of crimes that are applicable or punishable by death. But the implications of these two men, Yusufu Mieraili and Bilal Mohammed, have raised questions about fair trial rights, protection from torture and ill treatment during detention, Thailand's very, very terrible detention laws, protection from ill treatment in detention. And this has been seen in the deep south provinces where lots of people have been prolonged detainees and have experienced very terrible treatment. But this is more important to the application of the rule of law, an independent, a fair trial, and a competent trial. And of course, a trial that is conducted within a reasonable time frame. So this case has had a terrible, sad history. This is not about the bombing itself. The bombing obviously is a terrible thing, and there are lots of people lost their lives simply practicing their religion at a very, very popular shrine in central Bangkok. But the issue here is really with the legal process. There are a lot of headlines on this, and one of the things that is not surprising is that there's political implications. China has backed the death penalty for these two in this 2015 blast because, for a number of political reasons, because the Uyghurs are a minority, a persecuted minority in China, and that Thailand and China have this history of repatriation of Uyghur Muslims that goes back to the Prayut government under the military junta. The case is interesting because, again, it had moved forward after a period of 10 years, 10 years of basically nothing. For example, there were multiple delays, procedural problems. For example, originally, the two men were tried in a military court under the junta, but then they were later transferred to a civilian court. And the prosecution had 500 witnesses that were originally proposed, and then these things were later reduced to nothing, or to a more of a minimum. And then there were many different judges that were changed during the proceedings, particularly when it was transferred from a military court to a civilian court. And one of the most baffling and stifling processes is that they could not find appropriate translators to translate for these two men in their native tongue. So these court proceedings were delayed and postponed due to administrative issues due to the prosecutors having administrative issues, and today's setting or yesterday's verdict is just a sad commentary on a very, very sad trial. So, just to recap a little bit, some of the issues that were going on in this case. One of the men was arrested in Bangkok in August of 2015. That was Bilal Mohammed, and the other man was arrested in Phnom Penh and transferred to Thailand. So between 2015 and 2025, they were essentially detained in a detention facility in Bangkok. Their trial didn't start for almost 6 months. The trial actually didn't begin until February 2016. And for 3 years, the proceedings were held in a military court under the Uyghur government. And in July of 2019, the case was transferred to a criminal court, a southern criminal court in Bangkok. By 2025, October of 2025, the examination of prosecution witnesses was completed. That's a terribly long time to examine prosecution witnesses. And then finally, in December of last year, through the end of January, the defendants were finally able to give their testimony. And then, of course, not surprising, there were lots of procedural delays until now the court reaches a definitive ruling. But this is a very disturbing and despicable move, I think, on the part of the Thai government. Because, well, again, this is the second time that the death penalty has been issued. And the last time, as I said before, was one in 2018. And the Amnesty International at that time had said this was a deplorable move, which I totally agree. And in part simply because there's such a nasty history of abuse and not only abuse of people, lots of people in the detention system, but the rule of law and their basic human rights. And this is a very, very sensitive subject because they are Uyghur Muslims, and this is a very, very persecuted minority, and that minority group deserves fair treatment and, of course, a fair trial. But the history is worth mentioning. You know, back under the Uyghur government, there were a number of cases where Uyghur Muslims were deported either to Turkey and then some to China. And this was very, very controversial. It strained relations between the Turkish government and the Thai government. There's a lot of political pressure that was brought to bear by China on Thailand. And I think that was a part of the political calculus by Prayut at the time, succumb to Chinese pressure, but also succumb to Western pressure and human rights pressure, because I think under Prayut there was such a lack of legitimacy that he had to appeal to both sides in that case. So some were sent to Turkey, and of course some were sent back to China. But this is not a military dictatorship thing. This is a government thing. This is a problem with the Thai government, consecutive Thai governments, because for those who follow Thai politics, Thailand has this notorious history. And back in February of 2025, they had sent 40 Uyghurs back to China after, of course, a decade in detention. This was such a nasty, ugly thing because entire government departments, entire government ministries were unaware of what was going on, and there were allegations that security cameras were turned off, and actually these people were taken under their cloak of darkness and shuffled away in the middle of the night. And some people within Petong Torn's government were shocked by the move. So this is something that is very, very disturbing, and there are, again, broader implications, not just on the outcome, the death penalty case, but Thailand's treatment of Uyghur Muslims in general. One, it highlights systemic abuses, systemic issues within the criminal justice system in Thailand. Full stop. And it just underscores that there are human rights implications. The international human rights organizations have argued, like I'm doing now. This has broader concerns, particularly in the case of death penalty issues. This is very, very sensitive. And the prolonged detention of these two men raises serious concerns about rule of law and Thailand's lack of compliance, not only with the rule of law, its own domestic rule of law, but with international treaty obligations. Its questionable adherence to the Committee on Torture, to its own domestic laws, to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the fact that the UN Working Group called the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention called the detention of these two men completely arbitrary. So, to wrap up, these two men been held in detention for more than 10 years, finally get the death penalty. And it's very unclear because there are more procedural steps that are yet to come. They could be on death row, just like the other 500 or so that are in Thailand on death row. They could be in death row for many, many years, and they may not be sentenced to death. But it's a personal opinion of mine that the state should not be killing citizens. Particularly, Thailand has an appalling history of abuse towards a particular group like the Uyghurs. But I think this prompts people to really just take a step back and look at what's really going on, and to take a closer examination of Thailand's justice system, which this case exposes as very, very flawed. So that's it for today, and hope you join me next time. Thank you so much.